Hi, everybody, this is Zahara, and welcome to the second episode of our awesome African series. Today I'm talking to an old friend, Nick Hunt Davis. We've worked together in the creative industry, and today we're discussing all things creative, conscious, and African. Stay tuned if you want to hear about his views on artificial intelligence and being responsible technology designers. Hi, everybody. Today we have Nick Hunt Davis with us. I love your shirt, Nick. Just tell me, what are you wearing?
So yeah, this pattern's called Ankara, and it's Dutch.
Looks like a Madiba shirt, actually.
Yeah, so I didn't know this. This was a gift from a friend back home. I got a couple of them, and I was always a little, well, anyway, the design is called Ankara and was made by the Dutch to sell in Indonesia. I don't know, like 100 years ago. I don't remember exactly when.
I think colonialism happened a long time ago. Yeah.
It was, yeah. I mean, and happened over such a long period of time. Who knows? But it was made for the Indonesian market and wasn't as successful, I think, as they'd hoped. And I'm going on memory. I read this a while ago, but it was very successful in East Africa, and then just became a thing. And now that's the very strong association is with Africa. But in fact, originally it's a Dutch design.
So are you saying that the African prints are actually Dutch?
Yeah, it's really seriously bad cultural appropriation, actually.
The African stole the Dutch design and made it their own.
Yeah. Interesting. I had no idea. And now I feel a little less weird about wearing it. I don't know. I probably have some Dutch heritage in me somewhere. So.
Okay, another question. Do you feel like you're African?
So I thought a lot about this question because I knew it was coming. And I'm sad to admit I haven't got a really punchy answer. Because the question I then thought is, what does it mean to be African? And I'll tell you what it means to be African for me, because that's all I can do. So for me, what it means to be African is I grew up, there's a lot of complexity in being African. There's a lot of really difficult history. And I think for me, what it means to be African is to kind of inherit a sense of responsibility to make my home Africa what I know it can be and what I've seen it be. Because it's my home. I've lived here in the Netherlands now for just over 3 years. South Africa is my home. It feels like my home. And since I've moved here, I've got quite a different perspective on a lot of things, obviously. But one of the things that has made me really proud is how wrong our perceptions as South Africans is of Europe in the context of innovation and work in technology, and also the European perspective on South Africa. So what I'm proud of is, and I always suspected this, but now I'm here long enough, I know. I had this image in my head. I was in advertising for a long time before I got into product design and UX. And we have this, or at least I had this idea that, in America and in Europe and in the first world, that's where the real next level innovation and really clever, cool, high-tech, fancy stuff is happening. And I've been here long enough to have seen and had validated a few times that if anything, it might be the opposite.
Really?
Yes. And again, this is just my narrow one single human being perspective, but so what I've seen is that the drive from my South African colleagues is a whole other level to here. And that's not to say that the people here have any less drive. I think the needs are different. I think if you wake up every day and you have complete security in the knowledge that you know where your meal's coming from, you feel safe, that the public transport's there, everything, all my living here now, all my basic needs are very adequately and comfortably met. So I could just lean back and go with the flow. It's not who I am. And I don't think, other South African friends who've moved here have shared similar sentiments where, and maybe I'll get used to it, and that's probably a bad thing, but
comfort zone.
Yeah, the difference in innovation I see in South Africa is really clever, and I think it's needs-driven thinking. It's when you're solving a problem that's actually a problem, there are negative consequences to this thing not being solved, is a very different thing to how do we make this thing that works a bit nicer? And making something that already works a bit nicer is cool. And that's not to say that there can't still be huge paradigm shifts in making a thing that works work a million times better. That's also special. But I feel like the kind of innovation I see coming out of my South African friends and colleagues is more likely to result in that paradigm shift than the thinking that is, let's make it a little bit better. I know in agile and product design and development, we always talk about incremental improvement, and that is a very good approach. And that's something that I see is done here very, very well. The startups that I've worked with in Europe are exceptionally good at good enough. And that is, if it doesn't sound like it, it is a real compliment. That's high praise. Because sometimes what can happen is when you overreach for the blue sky vision of it, you can miss some of the basics and the core elements that are really crucial. And then you don't really end up with anything. But that's also part of an early process where you've just got to throw things against the wall to see what sticks and uncover kernels of realness that you can aim for. But I think it's the need, the different level of needs, and there's a real spark from South Africa in a spark to create change and to make things better. And that's because there is a lot we can make better.
I think also, your creativity comes up. When we're talking about problem solving, we also talk about creativity. And that's, something you've been very well known for, right? Nick, the creative, right?
Oh, right.
Everything, the creative director, creative designer. Where does that come from for you?
Okay, so for me, so first, thanks. That was nice and made me feel good. I like the creative moniker, is cool. I think creativity is just approaching problem solving from lots of different places. And actually leads me to one of the things I really like about the philosophy with the African Futures Academy is I think a big part of why I consider myself a good problem solver and what you might call creativity is being able to tie lots of different seemingly unrelated things together. So I spend a lot of time learning about everything, even stuff that is not at all related to my career. And I remember there was a long time when I almost felt guilty for doing that, where I'd feel like, oh, I should invest energy in this Udemy course because it's not going to directly impact my career development. But I got over that quickly, and it actually has, and it always does impact my career development because a problem I solve, I learn how to solve this problem in some 3D modeling software. Guaranteed, I'll be doing a business proposal, something completely unrelated. And that little problem I solved with 3D modeling, oh, you know what? I can actually apply that same solution here. And that happens to me all the time. And I think the reason that that happens is, turn off my notifications here. I think the reason that that stuff can happen is because I've made an effort to judge myself less about what I learn, to allow myself to learn for fun. Because I used to do it when I was in high school and university, like non-stop all the time. And then I went through a period when I got like serious about my career, where I would guilt myself and pressure myself into not wasting time learning these unrelated things. But thank goodness I did pick up that it's not a waste, it never is. And any skill that, no matter how unrelated to my job, is super valuable. And when it comes to being, prepared for the future, super important, because the job that's going to exist in 10 years that doesn't exist today, you can't prepare and learn for that job now because you know what it is. But if you can learn the skill of applying applying solutions abstractly to things, then any skill you learn is applicable to the future. And the more of those sorts of things I learn, the more I realize that basically all of this is governed by a small rule set and framework. Like, if I can give you a couple of, I think I mentioned this to you when we spoke the other day, but something as simple as a cost-benefit analysis or a risk-effort analysis, where, I say it out loud and it seems super obvious, but it wasn't for so long. Before I make an important decision, I see, what is the risk if I do this wrong? Or, what is the cost, the expense to do it versus what is the benefit or the value? And I apply that framework to so many things. If I'm trying to decide what the scope is of the first release of a product, an MVP or something, of course I'll apply that. What are the things that have the best value for the least effort? That's easy. But I apply it to other areas of my life too. If I'm going to go on holiday and I can't decide where, it's like a really effective version of a pros and cons list. And that's something that I learned in the context of product design and apply everywhere. And that's just one of a few kind of key decision-making frameworks that I learned in one place and apply everywhere else. So
I think that's a very, very important trait to have, to be able to learn new skills all the time from anywhere, and then be able to transfer them wherever they are needed, and that's the only way you're going to be able to cope with what comes up in the future. Like you said, you can't, go and study for a job because we don't know what jobs are going to come up. Whatever the needs are in whatever place you are, that's going to,
We know that we're probably going to work for Elon Musk, but apart from that.
So your job title is very interesting. Tell us about that. What's your LinkedIn title?
Nick Hunt Davis, Human Cyborg Relations.
What does that mean?
So that's a Star Wars joke. C-3PO, his role is Human Cyborg Relations, and that's cute. No, why I said that is because it does kind of describe what I do, and I'll explain why. But also just having fun with it, because the LinkedIn labels can be a bit vapid, or the moment I give it a very, like if I said product designer, then it puts me in a box. And it's what I do, it's not who I am. So to label myself as what I do, that's rather a bullet point list of things I can do. But Human Cyborg Relations, what I like about that is it's super geeky, which is cool. But
we have our own club.
It's also meaningful because that is really what I do. When So specifically, I'm a designer. I'm a design leader, but I do product design, UX, customer service design, all that. But why human cyborg relations is fun is because it's actually what I do, how we engage with not just the technology, but the people around us, is the relations between humans and cyborgs. I used to say human-machine relations because I thought it was more accurate, even though it's not what was in Star Wars. But
So you're a
but
Star Wars fan, right?
I'm
I
not
take
even the
it
biggest Star Wars fan. I mean, I dig Star Wars, but
as much as the next person.
yeah, well, maybe a little bit more. But
Okay.
what I liked about it is also it's a nice little reminder that all the tools and technology that we use is kind of a cyborg too. I know we are because I'm wearing glasses and I have a phone in my pocket. So a cyborg is a combination of a human and a machine working together. So
And
every interaction we have, even with the tool, is still one with a cyborg. And yeah, my job is to improve the relations between us and the tools and people we work with.
yeah, and that's, I see, is increasingly getting blurred, the division between human and machine or cyborg, the tools are an extension of ourselves now. We don't know where we begin and where
Well,
we end.
do you know about the press release happening tomorrow?
No, I
So
don't.
tomorrow, the 28th of August, Elon Musk's company, Neuralink, have a
Oh,
press
yeah.
conference. Have you heard about this? So
Yeah.
what he's going to demonstrate, he says tomorrow, is a working example of the implant. And that's what it is. It's little fibers going into our brain, and
I
that's his
don't
goal.
I don't
Emerged.
know how I feel about that.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it's too invasive for me. I'm not at that stage where I can say, yeah, I want my brain uploaded into a
Yeah.
machine.
What's interesting, my perspective is a little different just because I have a neurological anomaly, dysplasia of the insular cortex.
Yes, we know
But
what that means, Nick.
oh, everybody, common knowledge. No, it's brains are wildly complicated things. But why I have a slightly different perspective is the implant that they plan is something that's already done.
Mhm.
And it's something I nearly had to have done a couple of years ago, where they do put very fine rods down through your skull into your brain as a means of treatment for some types of epilepsy. Also, some parts of your brain are, I'm not a neurologist, so please might get stuff wrong, but some parts of the brain are so deep and tricky to get through MRI scans that if you want a bit of a high fidelity look at what's happening, they will also do this with implants so that they can measure brainwave activity deeper in the brain. So he's piggybacking on that tech to, yeah, literally that's the goal. I think their little slogan is if you can't beat them, join them. And the them, this is artificial intelligence. So I'm very curious and excited to see.
So, like, where does it end? There's so much happening in the space of artificial intelligence. It's just this race to create more invasive things, I guess, where the machines are basically taking over all human functions. I don't know what that means for us as a
Yeah,
species.
it's
And this is the problem, right? We are the designers. We are helping to design these futures with these machines and how that should go. And I don't think we're fully conscious of what it is we're actually doing.
absolutely. And I think there's a big danger in that right now. Artificial intelligence, in the very clear, specific way in which it's being used in businesses today, is not at all the same as the sci-fi artificial general intelligence that we read about. But even that kind of AI now is dangerous because as I mentioned earlier, we're all cyborgs. It's not an algorithm in isolation. It wasn't born out of magical digital dust. Human beings made it and taught it, even with reinforcement training and machine learning that is self-supervising. So instead of operating too much on being taught by human beings that, yes, that's right, no, that's wrong, yes, that's right, teach it, self-supervising AI will check themselves before they wreck themselves. And the thinking is that it'll result in more responsible and unbiased data interpretation. Because that's the problem. Right now, all AI really is, and I'm grossly simplifying it, is trying to find specific measurable insights in large data sets, and then using that insight to inform a decision on how to act. And that's really scary because, for example, this is a real world example I've seen recently. A lot of recruiting companies will use AI to pass CVs. We'll read CVs and put them into categories and all of that, which is wonderful. It's, if your job is to go through 100,000 CVs, yeah, totally, you want some help. That makes a lot of sense. If you want to write a good CV to get a job in a big European tech company today, and I say big European tech company because I'm in Europe now, that's the experience I have. They'll use one of these services or tools or businesses to pass through all of these CVs. And if you actually want to get in the front door there and you don't already have a connection or some network, you really need to write your CV like you're writing SEO for a website, which is so inhuman. So if I'm writing a CV, if I were writing a CV now, I would include a new page on the back of my CV I would normally never have, where I would bullet point list stupid, I say stupid, it's important, but things that you take it for granted. I would have to put a list now to say hard skills, Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft, and anyone these days, certainly in my industry, who's applying for a job, the assumption is you're computer literate. But if we're asking a machine to read through millions of CVs and then churn out the ones that check all the right boxes, we're going to get those ones that have actually thought to mention all the SEO keywords. And that's interesting because we have to totally change our approach to one that is not very human and authentic so that we can accommodate this tool or technology or AI that is being built by humans.
This is a very important thing you bring up, right? About being less human and being less authentic in our interactions to accommodate the machines. Don't you think it should be the other way around?
It should be, and I think it's going to be. I think we human beings are so adaptable that it's the path of least resistance for us to adjust to accommodate, in this example, the AI. I'm going to stop saying AI because it's such an ominous big term and we're talking about a very specific thing here. So to accommodate machine learning categorization, we make these changes. But it's the same with social media. These TikTok kids these days, they know how the algorithms work. They know how to put the right content up at the right time. They have an intuitive understanding of this stuff because they've grown up with it. And they're also altering their behavior and methods to accommodate the algorithm, because changing the algorithm, it's the easy way to do it. Having us adjust is much easier than figuring out how to make everything work around us.
So
I don't know,
basically,
it's always a bad thing.
we are being governed by algorithms, right? So you can see what you just said, our behavior is changing because of ththese algorithms. We suit what's happening. Don't you think that's like mass control?
I guess so. It is. I wouldn't use the word control, only because to me that implies some kind of nefarious intent, that there's someone with someone's on purpose trying to make us behave this
Well,
way.
well, I mean, who's designing these algorithms, right? It governs our behavior
So
online.
that's a good question. And who makes these algorithms? It's us. We do. And what I meant there is, of course, that the algorithms, in the case of social media, are using the data we give it through our behavior to improve. So that's the one side. But the other side, when I say it's us, it's our colleagues. You know, data scientists who work in this stuff. So do I. And I can say, for those that I know, I'm sure you probably can agree, none of them are evil, you know, none of them are in the pocket of the Illuminati that I know of.
How would you know that?
Well, this interview suddenly cuts off, I think we'll know. Yeah, we don't know that, but it's the control you talk about, I guess, is it's the outcome of how we do things without, I don't think there are any bad actors involved in the way it works. I think it's a lack of oversight and a lack of responsibility and a lack of understanding that results in these bad things like, you know, unfair bias when looking at CVs. But yeah, I don't think anyone's making the decision at any point to do the bad thing. But if we're not paying attention and we're not aware and we're not making concerted effort to identify those bad things and fix them, then we're complicit in it, yes.
Yeah,
But
I totally agree with that, because, you know, if we are unconscious, that's going to lead to a different outcome than if we were conscious about the things that we are interacting with and the decisions we're making. And I think that's one of the key things we're trying to push, you know, with this whole movement. It's, you know, systemic change for the future, creating new visions for what we want. But interacting with technology needs conscious intent, or it's going to have really bad outcomes for all of us.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially the people working in tech, the developers, the designers, the product managers. I mean, those people are at the core of all these things that are happening.
Yeah.
And we don't question.
But you know, what drives and motivates those people, and I say those people, I mean us, when I'm making the bad decision, because it falls on all of us. I work in a big multinational product, and when I make a small design decision, it in some small way affects everyone who touches it. It also has an impact on how we have to build, and therefore the infrastructure that we're creating now that other people will build on top of over time. But if we aren't given the space and motivation to consider those angles, then it becomes very, very difficult to retroactively fix it. And I think the real challenge for us is finding the space and opportunity to look at those things from that angle. You know, it's one thing when a company talks about ethics and, you know, does a LinkedIn campaign about how we put this at the forefront of that, and that's really good. I'm not dunking on social responsibility, but I think it's one thing saying it and another doing it, and it's really hard because to do social responsibility for a big company means we have a budget and we'll get a few initiatives and we'll do a thing, and that's fantastic. But where it falls through the gaps is that kind of responsibility, especially with technological advancement, needs to be woven into the culture of the product and the business. It needs to be everybody's responsibility to be aware of these things and consider it with every decision we make. And that's not the case. I mean, in most big businesses, not to plug my own, but I'm quite proud where I work now, we do take the time and space for this, which is a very special thing for me because it's usually not the case. But it's hard to convince a C-level person that, hey, we need a little more time to consider the ethical implications of what we're building. Because to them, and I say them, they're also pressured by the capitalist system to minimum effort, maximum monies. So it's hard, but it gets easier the more you push for it. So it's a constant fight. It's not something that we can ever, I don't think we can ever win this game. I think it's just, this is a very bad example because I do not go to gym ever. But I think it might be a little bit like going to gym. You don't go to gym so that you can win fitness. It's just, you've got to always be working at it to keep healthy. And with the new tools we're building that are so easily, once it's in circulation and people use it a lot, then it's there and it's sticky and it's really hard to fix. So if we can be conscious and like going to the gym every day when we go to work, we fight the fight of actually considering the implications, then it becomes easier in little bits. Doing it all at once is really, really hard.
Yeah, so this reminds me of a situation when we were working together and you told me this big project was coming up and I'd be so excited to do the research on it, but there was a small problem because of the implications that it
I
had.
remember, yeah.
Yeah. And so when I did the research and I looked at what this project was about, it was, lots of big name companies were in there.
It was Unilever.
And Monsanto was also part of it,
Yeah,
and it was going to disrupt the entire food production system in the whole of Africa.
It was, I remember, it was horrifying. And I think the part of that scared me most is I was sold. The representative came to speak to us to see how we could help, because we'd done some really nice work in parallel to their needs. So it seemed like we would be the right people to do this for them. And yeah, I was sold on the pitch, the way it was explained to me. And I think the way I initially explained it to you, it sounded amazing. It sounded like a really good thing. But yeah, as you were saying, you did some more homework and...
Yeah, when you think of the long-term implications and what that means for people at the end of the line, it's not just about making money for the company. If you're going to damage the whole of Africa, you should actually stop and say something. And this is the thing, right? I mean, all of us were in this team, we were working on it, and we were told these were the things you had to do, and we had deadlines, and they just expected us to do it. But we knew something was wrong. And it's so hard to speak up. I mean, we spoke about it. We said this was not right. But there were other people in the team that said, no, just do your work. The stakeholders matter the most.
And in a very narrow sense, they're right. I mean, you could go your whole life just making your stakeholder happy, and you would make your salary. You'd probably still get promoted. You can, live the capitalist dream doing that. But I mean, I don't need to tell you this. I know you well enough to know that you'd absolutely agree. There's no, I mean, that's terrible. That's how so many generations before us have gone. And the result is you're just kicking the problem down the road or making it even worse. And the example you gave, had we taken on that project and we'd been successful at it, I think we would both be very, very, very sad today with the repercussions. And while we were able to just flat out say no, and there weren't serious repercussions for us, I don't know that they didn't. I mean, they probably just went to another team who didn't do the same homework and research that you did. But as you said now, it's so important to know that you can say no.
Yeah.
And even if you say no and you lose that fight, that's okay too sometimes. But we just keep saying no and keep saying no, and they'll get the message.
Yeah.
It's hard fighting against the money man. That's pretty much it. But the system only runs because we run it. So more of us just become really awful cogs in the machine. It might just kick us out and we can make a better one.
Well, exactly. I mean, this is, if you keep numbing yourself with money and say, it's okay, as long as I get this bonus, it doesn't matter. All these people want to kill themselves in Africa because of this project that we created. There's so many stories like that where we
Mm,
do these things because it makes corporate a lot of money, but it
yeah.
ruins communities, ruins the environment, ruins people's lives. And we as designers or people in the tech industry are the ones creating these problems
Yeah.
because we're not saying no.
Yeah.
We're not standing up for what is right.
But it's also, Zahara, it's hard to have that vision and insight. If you weren't on the team in that example, I we might not have even figured out what you found out for us. Certainly not as early as we did. And the longer and deeper you go into a project like that, the harder by far it becomes to pull out. And I learned a lot from you in that engagement, and kind of just checking those things more carefully, because sometimes it's obvious. If super clear, oh, this is bad, then that's cool. But yeah, you're right. We can have these really big, profound impacts on other people on the other side of the world we don't even think about.
Okay, so any last words for the next generation?
I think a couple of takeaways that I wanted to get across, I already mentioned some stuff, is first, if you're looking at Europe and America and thinking that they're operating on a whole different level, they aren't. Obviously, there are always exceptional people and companies all over the world, but generally, no, they aren't. Take the time to look at what is typical in one of the places that we believe is so, far ahead of us. It's not. If you're only exposed to the cream of the crop, which are the few tech startups that really make it into the news cycle, and of course you're going to see that and go, wow, that's next level innovation. And it is. That's how it got into the news, because it's the exception. It's not the rule. So yeah, I think that was one big learning for me moving here, and something that I always try to tell friends and colleagues back home is it's a lie that things are all next level here. When I started working here, big time imposter syndrome in the beginning, because, well, now I'm going to see how the shit really is. No way, not at all the case. It was, yeah.
But you mentioned something really important, like you identify with the way we work here, the way we think, the way we solve problems. That is part of being African, I think. You're even though you're white and you're in Europe, you still have this essence in you, or this African spirit in you.
And that's something that now that you say it, I'll totally take credit for that one. No, but that it is a common trait, I think, among all my African friends and family or whatever. And it shows. And this is another thing I've noticed, that there's a little bit of a bias towards South Africans in the tech workplace here in the Netherlands. And it's a really positive one. Because I think, and I'm assuming, I don't know for sure, but my assumption is that all the South Africans I know who are here are really amazing by South African standards. So by European standards, we are incredible. Work ethic is, yeah, we have really, really good work ethic. And it's the innovation and the pushing for the best version instead of the next version that was good.
You can tell.
Yeah, you can have that one. To meet the needs of Europeans requires a different approach than the much more difficult and complex needs that are in Africa.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think, every problem you can think of, we have it in Africa that needs to be solved. It's not solved yet. Everything, especially basic needs, people don't have running water or sanitation or housing or food. And those are things that need to be met. And, so
and those are big things. And those are the things where we need the paradigm shift. It's not something you can just put a little plaster on.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a broken bit of it. The whole thing isn't working or isn't there. But it's cool, because if anyone can solve those problems, I'm now, with the perspective of having worked both there and here, it's going to come from Africa. The solutions aren't going to come from over here because there's not the same need or drive to solve problems that have been solved here mostly for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. It's we always, look outside ourselves to go find the answers, but the answers are right home, and the people just don't know that.
Yeah. The illusion of how next level things are in other places in the world is totally that. It's just an illusion. If anything, it's the other way around. The level of innovation and creativity and drive from South Africans is next level. And the moment you operate somewhere else in the world, or even remotely with a company somewhere else in the world, you'll learn it for yourself very quickly. But don't fall into the trap of believing we're anything less than exceptional, because that's not true. And in the remote working world today, it's me living here is not as big a deal actually as it once was. I feel as a South African who lives abroad, my goal is to come back. It always has been. It's my home, and I feel very strong. I feel a responsibility towards my home to give back.
I think you pointed out no matter where you are, you still have that African spirit with you, and we look forward to having you back home. It was great talking to you. It was great
Oh,
catching up
it's
after
always
so
nice
long.
talking to you.
I
Thanks,
will
Sahara.
chat to you again soon. Thank you,
Okay,
Nick.
thanks.
Bye.
Bye.